Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Mistapad Paramahansa Parajikacharya Astotra to Shri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parajikacharya Astotra to Shri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavin Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, Dimitra, I have to ask. The fan is on? The fans are on? I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. And we have something's open back here? Okay. Hare Krishna. And tapas, what verse? 20? Okay. All righty. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 27th day of October 2021 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 16, the Divine and Demoniac Natures, text number 20, bottom of page 633 in most of your books. Excuse me. Asurim Yonamapanna Mudha Janmani Janmani Mam Aprapyaiva Kaunteya Tato Yanti Adamam Gatim Asuring Yonamapanna Mudha Janmani Janmani Mama Prapyaiva Kaunteya Tato Yan Chadamangatim Asuring Yonamapanna Mudha Janmani Janmani Mama Prapyaiva Kaunteya Tato Yan Chadamangatim Asuring Yonamapanna Mudha janmani janmani mama prapya eva kaunteya tato yancha damam gatim. Dimitri, try it. Asuring yonamapanna Mudha janmani janmani mama prapya eva kaunteya tato yanti damam gatim. Asurim yonamapanna Mudha janmani janmani mama prapya eva kaunteya tato yanti damam gatim. Saul, you want to try? No, okay. Tapas? Asurim yonamapanna Mudha janmani janmani mama prapya eva kaunteya tato yanti damam gatim. Asurim yonamapanna Mudha janmani janmani mama prapya eva kaunteya tato yanti damam gatim. Want to try? Asurim yonamapanna Mudha janmani janmani mama prapya eva kaunteya tato yanti damam gatim. Michelle, want to try? Asurim yonamapanna Mudha janmani janmani mama prapya eva kaunteya tato yanti damam gatim. Zoomland.
Asurim yoni apanna
Asurim yonamapanna
Mudha janmani janmani
Mudha janmani janmani
mam aprapeva kaunteya
mama prapya eva kaunteya
tato yat adamam gatim.
tato yanti damam gatim. Anyone else?
Asurim yonim apanna
Asurim yonamapanna
Mudha janmani janmani
Mudha janmani janmani
Mama prapya eva kaunteya
mama prapya eva kaunteya
Tato yantyadamam gatim.
tato yanti damam gatim. Mark, was that you who started? Okay, give it a shot. You'll be the last. Asurim yonamapanna Mudha janmani janmani mama prapya eva kaunteya tato yanti damam gatim. Asurim, demoniac, yonim, species, apanaha, gaining, mudhaha, the foolish, janmani, janmani, in birth after birth, mam, me, aprapya, without achieving, eva, certainly, kaunteya, O son of Kunti, tataha, thereafter, yanti, go, adamam, condemned, gatim, destination. Lord Krishna says, attaining repeated birth amongst the species of demoniac life, O son of Kunti, such persons can never approach me. Gradually they sink down to the most abominable type of existence. And who are those people before we read the purport? Those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. Purport. It is known that God is all-merciful, but here we find that God is never merciful to the demoniac. It is clearly stated that the demoniac people, life after life, are put into the wombs of similar demons. And, not achieving the mercy of the Supreme Lord, they go down and down, so that at last they achieve bodies like those of cats, dogs, and hogs. It is clearly stated that such demons have practically no chance of receiving the mercy of God at any stage of later life. In the Vedas also it is stated that such persons gradually sink to become dogs and hogs. It may be then argued in this connection that God should not be advertised as all-merciful if he is not merciful to such demons. In answer to this question, in the Vedanta Sutra we find that the Supreme Lord has no hatred for anyone. The placing of the asuras, the demons, in the lowest status of life is simply another feature of his mercy. Sometimes the asuras are killed by the Supreme Lord, but this killing is also good for them. For in Vedic literature we find that anyone who is killed by the Supreme Lord becomes liberated. There are instances in history of many asuras, Ravana, Kamsa, Hiranyakashipu, to whom the Lord appeared in various incarnations just to kill them. Therefore God's mercy is shown to the asuras if they are fortunate enough to be killed by him. Om Jnana Timbarandasya Jnanandana Salakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, the reason why Krishna is so, I don't want to say inimical, but so adamant in cutting down the demons is because they invariably persecute the devotees. The most perfect example, if you want to call it perfect, is Hiranyakashipu himself. But all those demons that attacked Krishna in Vrindavan, and after Vrindavan, when he went to Mathura, there was Jarasandha, attacking Krishna, and in doing so, also attacking all the devotees in Mathura. Certainly, if Krishna wasn't there, they would have been annihilated. So this is the nature of the demons. They internalize this enmity. Remember that we talked about enviousness and enmity. And that manifests against the devotees because the devotees are insistent that there's someone superior to them. Their whole reason for being demons is to become top dog, right? Isn't that what Hiranyakashipu did? After his brother was killed, he went off and performed all these austerities so he would become more powerful than could be conceived. And of course he wanted that holy grail of immortality, which he couldn't receive. But he thought he had gotten it. But that's the sine qua non, the essential quality of the demons, is that they are atheists. They deny the existence of God, or they deny the power of God, and they're incorrigible. Because their whole idea is that they want to be the enjoyers and God himself. They want to be the supreme. So it's incompatible with any kind of devotional atmosphere. It completely disrupts everything. Just like you see the demons who made their way into Vrindavan, they caused a tremendous disruption. Some of them Krishna killed out in the forest. It was almost like play. But think of Arishtasura. Arishtasura came right into the village. Huge bull. His tail was so huge that it was touching the clouds. And the women were so frightened, some had miscarriages. Terrorized the whole town. So Krishna challenged him. You want to fight? Who could fight with me? The thing is, you get intoxicated with that powerful body. You think you're invincible. Just like there's this idea of those who perform severe austerities to just rise up to Brahman, but they deny the personality of Godhead. It's spoken of in the second or third chapter of the 10th canto, when the demigods come to offer their prayers. Krishna's in the womb of Devaki, and they're kind of secreted in the corners of the dungeon there, and they're offering these wonderful prayers. And the most famous one, Prabhupada made it famous, has to do with this illusion of those who try to attain liberation on the impersonal platform. It says, Ye and ye aravindaksha vimukta maninas trayasta bhavad avishuddha buddhya aruha kritrena padang padang tata patantya dho anadudaya shmarangaya. We had this word adho. Adho means down. They cast them down. So these are the impersonalists who they're averse to serving Krishna's lotus feet. They more or less want to be God, not in order to lord it over others, but in order to merge into the oneness and just be in complete bliss forever in the impersonal. So that's called, of course, the demigods address Krishna as a lotus-eyed one. But those who are of impure intelligence and are averse to serving your lotus feet, they perform, the few who can do it, Can you imagine trying to control the senses and the material urges But there's no holy name, there's no prasadam, there's no deities, there's no festivals, there's no nothing. It's just you and your senses and your mind. Imagine trying to control like that. You may be able to do it for a little while, but then. So that's what happens. A very few, by this incredibly difficult process, aruha kutrena, the very word has within it, there's a lot of onomatopoeias in Sanskrit. Onomatopoeias are words that mean like what they sound like. We have them in English all the time, sprinkle and blast and all kinds of things. So this word is kutrena. There's also the seed syllable of for Nrsingadev. All of the great the deities they have their own seed syllable when you worship them. And if you do pujari work, you'll see before you offer to Gaudatai and before you offer to Radha and Krishna, you'll say the seed syllable, Shreem, Kleem, like that. For the Guru, it's Aing. So for Lord Nrsingadev, it's Shraum. You can just hear him ripping apart Hiranyakashipu. Shraum. It's not like Radharani, Shreem, and Krishna, Kleem, real sweet syllables. Anyway, so they may, Aruha Krichena Parang Padang, they may get to the Brahma Bhuta platform by great austerities, but Patantya Do, they fall down again. That's what the Patanti is fall, and Ado means down into this material world. Why? Anadriyushmarangreya, because they're averse to serving your lotus feet. Prabhupada would often describe how the Mayavadis, they declare, their motto is, one of their mottos is, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mitya. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mitya, which means Brahman alone is true, and all of this Jagat is false. It's false. It doesn't exist. You think it is. So, Bhajan Rai Maharaj gave a class recently, and he asked, "What's wrong with that motto?" And I didn't. I forgot. But who knew? I think Ravi knew the answer. Anyway, it was that if Brahman is true and the source of everything, how could Jagat be false? If what comes from the truth has to be true. It may not be true in the way we think it's true, and that's our own illusion. But it's not false. It exists, but it's temporary. And it's not, your body is not you. That's the big fallacy. On the basis of that mistake, everything is built. People are identifying with the present state of body. Even in this one body, you think, oh, now I'm old. I can remember when I was young. Now I was young. No. The soul doesn't age, the soul doesn't die, the soul is not born. But you remember a different state of your body. That was then, I was then, now I'm old. Alas. But that's illusion. That misidentification, that doesn't exist. But you think it exists. You see the problem? So these demons, they're arch enemies of Krishna and arch enemies of Krishna's devotees. And so he's punishing them, and yes, it's painful, but eventually they'll be purified. Eventually come back up to the human form, and nobody's damned forever. There's no eternal damnation. No, absolutely. Then how could Krishna be all merciful? So Krishna is describing this state now. And now we're going to, I think we should move on, unless there is some discussion on this point, because the last 4 verses are very key. And they provide a lesson all in their own. They're coming up the last 4 verses of this chapter. It's a short chapter.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hari Bol, Nanabai.
So I have a quick question. When you said the impersonally says Jagat Mithya Brahma Satyam. So sometime, like in India, I never knew much about this, but when people are like they cheat, and then when you think that nothing in this world is like for pleasure of soul, then people think without knowledge Jagat is mithya, because when you get frustrated and with Jagat, with material energy and all that, then without thinking or going to this deep, people think it's mithya because they get frustrated and everybody's cheating. All this bad qualities. So, but it's like you said, it's not mithya, but it's temporary.
Yeah, it's temporary. Yeah, there's all kinds of ways that the mind works to try to deny the need for morality or laws. It's all, it's all mithya. There I can do whatever I want. Doesn't matter, But no, it's not mithya. There are authorities, the supreme authority, and there are rules and regulations. And if you violate them, you'll suffer. You'll suffer. And that's what the demons do. They are violation personified. But they're also spirit souls, and eventually they also become purified. And especially Lord Chaitanya is ready to deliver anyone. Jagai Madhai, they were practically, personifications of this chapter. But they were delivered by the mercy of Lord Nityananda. So the mercy of...
How do we explain, Prabhu, to other people about this concept? What's the best way to explain when they said, oh, everything mithya, because some people cheat other people and all these bad qualities going on. So when somebody says it's mithya, how do we explain that it's not mithya?
Prabhupada had a nice technique. He was debating one Mayavadi and he grabbed his shirt. You think this is false? No, wait a minute. Your life experience denies that. This is real, but the problem is our illusion in taking it for permanent, and denying that there's an underlying reality that is eternal.
Relative reality and then the ultimate reality, like real.
Yeah, it's like if you have a very vivid dream, while you're in the dream, it's very real for you. It can be a nightmare, or it could be the other side. But either way, you're in the dream and you're convinced, oh, this is wonderful or this is horrible. Then when you wake up, assuming it's a nightmare, you're very, very relieved. Oh, it was only a dream. But actually, your life during the waking time is just as unreal, just as dreamlike as the actual dream. Because it's temporary, and you'll come out of it, you'll be reborn in something else, a whole different species or something, and you'll completely forget. That's the thing, you'll completely forget that other experience, you'll start a whole new thing. So we want to get out of this successions of dreams in which we as spirit souls who are eternal are trying to convince ourselves that this is real, this is eternal, and if I can just control it, I'll be able to enjoy eternally. But it's impossible. We keep getting frustrated birth after birth. So Krishna consciousness means to come from the asat to the sat, from the non-existent to the existent, or from the dreamlike to the reality. And luckily, the reality is Satchidananda. There is bliss there. But we have to cure ourselves of the material disease, of identifying with these temporary coverings, not just the external, but also the internal, the mind, which is even more difficult to transcend. So Krishna's now going to wind up the chapter. I really want to try to finish. Did you want to have a question? Okay.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Haribol, Dhanabhai. All right, text 21. Trivadang nadakasyedam dwaram nashanam atmanaha kama krodas tatha lobhas tasmareta tvayang chajit. There are three gates leading to this hell, which Krishna just described. Lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give them up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. Purport. The beginning of demoniac life is described here. One tries to satisfy his lust, and when he cannot, anger and greed arise. A sane man who does not want to glide down to the species of demoniac life must try to give up these three enemies, which can kill the self to such an extent that there will be no possibility of liberation from this material entanglement for a long time. That's the idea. So, short purport, but a very deep meaning here. Now, here's the idea of dwara again. You remember the dwaras? We had that with Rishabdev. Dwara is a gate, and it's a big, heavy gate that often locks behind you. If you go through that gate, then you're going to be in trouble. Generally, but there's also the gate to liberation. So we had Mahatsevam Dwaramaha Vimuktes. Tamo dwaram yoshitang sangi sangam. This is Rishabdev teaching right in the second verse. It says, serving the Mahatmas, the great souls, opens the door to liberation. And associating with those who are too licentious and too much involved in the senses opens the door to degradation. Tamo, which is darkness and hell. So then you question, well, okay, who's the Mahatma? And I'm going to try to, and he describes Mahantaste Samachitta Prashanta Vimanyabak Suridak Sadavoye. They're very peaceful. They have no envy in either ways toward others. Let's see, Mahantaste Samachitta, equipoised. In other words, they're devotees. So that's key. But if we we just associate with whoever we feel like it, and on the basis of material desire, then we're going to open up the door to a lower birth, to difficulties. So let's just quickly go over these three: Kama, Krodha, and Lobha. Now they're related. It all begins with Kama. Kama is the key, because that's where the prema, adulterated, how should I say, curdled, if you will, by the modes of nature, then that turns that same enjoying energy, that Ladini Shakti, which we are parcel of, what we have, toward matter, and that becomes completely frustrating. What is that verse? Avitam gyanametana gyananuchabainana kamarupena kontaya dushparena nalenacha. The second line is really famous. Kamarupena dushparena nalenacha, burns like fire, anala, and it's never satisfied. So once you go down that route, just like we in the second chapter, Dhyayatopshayanpungsa sangastesha bhajayate sangat sanjayate kamat krodo bhajayate krodat bhavati sammoha sammohat smriti vibrama smriti brangshad buddhinasho buddhinashad pranashiti. Krishna describes this, and it's more or less related to this chapter. So it begins with turning your back on Krishna, basically, and becoming attracted to this dual world, this material world, trying to exploit it, trying to enjoy it. So your love is now turned into lust, self-centered. How can I enjoy? And inevitably in this material world, you become frustrated. If not immediately, then over time, your desires are dashed, because there's tremendous limits on how much you can enjoy. And so you become angry or depressed. Kama krodhod bhavad becomes anger. Krodhat bhavati sammoha. From anger, you can become completely bewildered. You can do things you would never do in your normal state. You'd be sitting in jail for a 20-year sentence. Oh no, why did I do that? I killed my friend, whatever. He looked this way at my wife and I lost it, You're at the mercy of the material energy. You're out of control. Sammohat smriti vibramat, and then you lose more of your memory. If you think about it, without your memory, you're lost. Wake up in the morning, if you can't remember who you are, where I'm supposed to go to work, who your friends are, who your wife is. Everything depends on remembering all the things that you identify with. But if you start losing that, then you lose your humanity. And then from that lost memory, the intelligence becomes destroyed, and then you're really down into the lower animal species. So the intelligent person doesn't let that disease of lust take hold. It's like a madness. Nunam pramatta kurute vikarma yadindriya pritiya apranoti. More Shabdev. He's saying there, certainly those whose goal in life is simply sense gratification are mad. Not just mad, very mad. Pramattak. Because they're in that state, they're sure to perform vikarma, extremely sinful activity, which just produces the greatest suffering in this life and the next. We can see it all around us. So, tasmad etatrayam chajed. Therefore, he concludes with a lesson here, give those up. Therefore, a sane man, and I can add women also. This pertains to everybody. Should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. So it's very concise, and we can see it all around us. Now, here's what's the result. Next text. Etaiva mukta kaunteya Tamodvairaistu birnaraha acharat yatmanak shreyas tato yati param gatim. The man, the person who has escaped these three gates of hell, O son of Kunti, performs acts conducive to self-realization and thus gradually attains the supreme destination. Purport. One should be very careful of these three enemies to human life: lust, anger, and greed. The more a person is freed from lust, anger, and greed, the more his existence becomes pure. Then he can follow the rules and regulations enjoined in the Vedic literature. By following the regulative principles of human life, one gradually raises himself to the platform of spiritual realization. If one is so fortunate, by such practice, to rise to the platform of Krishna consciousness, then success is guaranteed for him. In the Vedic literature, the ways of action and reaction are prescribed to enable one to come to the stage of purification. The whole method is based on giving up lust, greed, and anger. By cultivating knowledge of this process, one can be elevated to the highest position of self-realization. This self-realization is perfected in devotional service. In that devotional service, the liberation of the conditioned soul is guaranteed. Therefore, according to the Vedic system, there are instituted the four orders of life and the four statuses of life, called the caste system and the spiritual order system. There are different rules and regulations for different castes or divisions of society, and if a person is able to follow them, he will be automatically raised to the higher platform of spiritual realization. Then he can have liberation without a doubt. So one may ask, well, okay, where can I find these rules? And that's answered in the next question, in the Shastra. But before we go there, for one who has become free of these gates, these three, lust, anger, and greed, then what does that person do? Acts, because it all comes down to what you actually do. In other words, you can have so many ideas, but what you actually do is what's going to determine your future, your destiny. So, acharat yatmanakshayas, such a person who has escaped these three by good and strong intelligence, acts for his ultimate good, this shreyas. Now this word keeps coming up. The whole Bhagavad Gita started with Arjuna changing his relation with Krishna from one of kind of arguing with him in the first chapter, beginning of the second chapter. He had all these arguments, and they were based on the Vedas. You know, if I kill all these men, then the women will become unprotected, and they'll be polluted, and there'll be unwanted progeny, and the earth will become hellish, and none of these Shraddha ceremonies will be performed. Anyone who knows Dharma Setu, periodically, quite often he's doing Shraddha ceremony for departed relatives of some of our friends. And that means there's a offering of prasadam to them, so that they can get purified and come down, and go on to their next birth and whatever, So there's all kinds of things. So that stopped. When the progeny are just rascals, they're not going to perform any shraddha, So all kinds of bad things happen. So he had all his arguments around. But the problem was he wasn't satisfied. Because his dharma, he's talking about dharma, was to fight. He was a great fighter, Kshatriya. And Krishna wanted him to fight in this battle. This was a righteous battle. He was on the side of good. His brother was Dharma personified, was going to be enthroned. The other side had tried to cheat them out of it in various ways, murder them in so many ways. So they were on the side of good. But still, he had this emotional attachment, to his teacher, to Bhishma Dev certainly, and so many others on the other side. So although he had these arguments, they were not really substantial, because all the arguments are negated because Krishna wanted him to fight. And that's what eventually won. So Shreyas, what happened? He's arguing. Then he sits down on the chariot, he drops his bow, he's pale, he's crying, he's trembling. He can't solve his problem by these talks. So he changes everything by surrendering to Krishna as a guru. Now, because they were friends. But friendly talks, you can talk from here to eternity and not really solve anything. But if one accepts the other as the guru, and he's actually worthy, who could be more worthy than Krishna, then you can solve something. So what does he say? He says, Karmanya dosho pahata svabhava prichami tvam dharma samudacheta Yak shreyak syan nishtitam bruhitan me shishastehim sharimam tvam papannam. You hear that word shreya in there. So he's saying this karpana means kripana, is miserly weakness. He's recognizing it in himself, you know. I've lost my real nature. Apahata swabhava. My kshatriya qualities have been stolen from me. Dropping the bowl is like, you know, the last thing a kshatriya ever wants to do. But he did, you know, because of my miserly weakness and my confusion. So I've got to get rid of that. What am I going to do? And he continues to analyze. Prichami tvam dharma samuda cheta. My consciousness is now bewildered about the right thing to do. Dharma. I admit that. You see? So he's approaching Krishna and say, Yakshreyaksan nishitam bruhitan me. Please tell me for certain how I can act for my ultimate good. Exactly, acharayat atmanakshayas, for the ultimate good of the soul. So, please instruct me. Now I am your disciple. I'm not your friend anymore. I'm not in that role. Shishyasteham. Now, Prabhupada explains this. I remember hearing this many years ago. The word shishya has the same root. You know, Sanskrit is a wonderful language. It's all the words are built up from these root syllables. Like the root syllable for shishya is the same as it is for shastra. You know, you heard that? Shastra and also shastra. So what is shared by those three? Shastra, shastra, and shishya. I'm sorry? No, that's something else. Shikshagu is something else. It's being controlled, agreeing to be controlled, or be controlled by force, by the shastra, by the weapon. If you don't agree to be controlled by the shastra, by the good book, you know, the realized scripture spoken by Krishna, then you'll be controlled by Durga's trident, her weapon. She's got so many weapons. You will be controlled. And as far as the shishya, that's also voluntary. It means you agree to be controlled by the guru. You have faith that the words are there, and that's what all the bowing down is about. Right? And now I am yours. Do with me what you like. That's real surrender. So he wants the same thing. Acharat yatmanakshayas. Someone who's escaped these three gates. Remember what they are: lust, anger, and greed. Acts for his own ultimate good. And tato yati param gatim, goes to the supreme destination. In other words, goes back to Godhead. So that's the stark choice we have. Allow ourselves to be influenced by lust, anger, and greed, and go through that door to darkness and suffering, or allow ourselves to surrender to the words that are being spoken by the Lord through the scripture, through the words of the realized acharya, and also through the supersoul. In those three ways, Krishna is trying to get to us and talk to us. So that's what Krishna is saying here we should do. The person who's escaped them acts in that way. And therefore the last verse is very important. Oh no, I'm sorry, there's the text 23, where he's saying that this is how you teach, is by contrast, back and forth. So now he's going to contrast what someone who doesn't do this, doesn't escape him, does. You know. So should we go to the next verse? Yeah. Okay. This is a very famous one. Yakshasta vinamutsrijya vartate kamakarataha nasa siddhim abapnoti nasukang naparam gatim. Okay, a lot of no's in there. What does that mean? He who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection, nor happiness, nor the supreme destination. And notice that the word is, again, kama, under the sway of material desire. He acts on that instead of according to the law of Shastra. The purport, as described before, the Shastra Vidhi, or the direction of the Shastra, is given to the different castes and orders of human society. Everyone is expected to follow these rules and regulations. If one does not follow them and acts whimsically according to his lust, greed, and desire, then he never will be perfect in his life. In other words, a man may theoretically know all these things, but if he does not apply them in his own life, then he is to be known as the lowest of mankind. in the human form of life, a living entity is expected to be sane and to follow the regulations given for elevating his life to the highest platform. But if it does not follow them, then he degrades himself. But even if he follows the rules and regulations and moral principles and ultimately does not come to the stage of understanding the Supreme Lord, then all his knowledge becomes spoiled. And even if he accepts the existence of God, if he does not engage himself in the service of the Lord, his attempts are spoiled. Therefore, one should gradually raise himself to the platform of Krishna consciousness and devotional service. It is then and there that he can attain the highest perfectional stage, not otherwise. The word kama-karataha is very significant. A person who knowingly violates the rules acts in lust. He knows that this is forbidden, but still he acts. This is called acting whimsically. He knows that this should be done, but still he does not do it. Therefore he is called whimsical. Such persons are destined to be condemned by the Supreme Lord. Such persons cannot have the perfection which is meant for the human life. The human life is especially meant for purifying one's existence, and one who does not follow the rules and regulations cannot purify himself, nor can he attain the real stage of happiness. So there it is. He's laying down the law. Yes, go ahead. Yeah. Please speak in the mic.
Yeah, excuse me, but is not this kind of overly categoric that is saying that such persons are destined to be condemned by the Supreme? No, well, such person cannot have the perfection which is meant for the human life. Not at all. Not by no means. Not later. Not never.
No. It means it can take a long time. There's no eternal. I mean, yeah, please. No, it's not forever.
Okay. That's it.
Yeah. There's none of that. You come back. But the whole thing is, why prolong the agony? That's the thing. We should strike while the iron is hot. Take advantage of the time that are with you. Bhaktivinoda has this song like that. He has a wonderful poem. So this is the stark reality. It's all Shastra Vidhi. The Shastra Vidhi are the instructions of Shastra. And what Srila Prabhupada came to teach, he lived by it. Remember the definition of an acharya. Very important to know these concepts. Daniel, any idea? Okay, he's an honest man. So now I'm going to tell you, don't forget again. So acharya, first of all, it's nice to know a little bit where the words come from. Achar is behavior, is activity, yes. So acharya has three qualities. Prabhupada is the prime acharya. He is the ideal acharya. Is the first thing, the Shastra. You very thoroughly. You know the Shastra. And you act according to the Shastras, the do's and the don'ts. And then you take the trouble to teach, to preach it. So knowing and living it and teaching it. That's the acharya. So that's why these classes are so important, why the books are so important. Because they're available to everyone. It's not like you have to make an application, can I? No, just open the book, And then you're confronted with these, and there's so many do's and don'ts. You don't have to worry about Varna Ashram right away if that comes. But the do's and don'ts just for human beings. And if you are willing to follow them, even to a partial extent, then you become more attracted and more open to the whole philosophy. If you're making the effort to become purified, and you have some preliminary faith, at least, that there's something here that's of value, that bring you into the association of devotees. Remember we were talking about that, how Sangha is practically everything. Like right now we're associating with Krishna because we're reading his words. We're associating with Prabhupada because we're reading his words. And that's purifying, even if you may not feel it right away. How does the purification act? It means that, when you're not in association and you're kind of free to do it, everyone says, no, I'm not going to do that. I used to do that kind of thing, but now I realize it's not very good for me. I'm going to go to the temple, In other words, that kind of this, or I'll read this. No, I'm finished with that. Let me read this. Let me read the Krishna book, That's where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. When you're willing to or even your preferences start to change for what you want to do, what you want to hear, what you want to see, what you want to eat, who you want to hang out with. And that we should pursue that, knowing what good association is and knowing what bad association is. It all depends on the intelligence. The intelligence has become purified, so you know, and then you have the will, you have the strength to do the right thing. And then you're beginning to get free of these gates to the lower realm. All right, we're going to finish this chapter. Last verse, very important. Tasmat shastram pramanam te karya vyavastitao gyatva shastra pradhanoktam karma kartamyaharhasi. One should therefore understand what is duty and what is not duty by the regulations of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. Purport. As stated in the 15th chapter, all the rules and regulations of the Vedas are meant for knowing Krishna. If one understands Krishna from the Bhagavad Gita and becomes situated in Krishna consciousness, engaging himself in devotional service, he has reached the highest perfection of knowledge offered by the Vedic literature. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made this process very easy. He asked people simply to chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and to engage in the devotional service of the Lord and eat the remnants of foodstuff offered to the deity. One who is directly engaged in all these devotional activities is to be understood as having studied all Vedic literature. He has come to the conclusion perfectly. Of course, for the ordinary persons who are not in Krishna consciousness or who are not engaged in devotional service, what is to be done and what is not to be done must be decided by the injunctions of the Vedas. One should act accordingly without argument. That is called following the principle of Shastra or scripture. Shastra is without the four principal defects that are visible in the conditioned soul: imperfect senses, the propensity for cheating, certainty of committing mistakes, and certainty of being illusioned. These four principal defects in conditioned life disqualify one from putting forth rules and regulations. Therefore, the rules and regulations as described in the Shastra, being above these defects, are accepted without alteration by all great saints, acharyas, and great souls. In India, there are many parties of spiritual understanding, generally classified as two, the impersonalist and the personalist. Both of them, however, lead their lives according to the principles of the Vedas. Without following the principles of the scriptures, one cannot elevate himself to the perfectional stage. One who actually, therefore, understands the purport of the Shastras is considered fortunate. In human society, aversion to the principles of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all fall downs. That is the greatest offense of human life. All right, let's read that again. In human society, aversion to the principles of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all fall downs. That is the greatest offense of human life. Therefore, Maya, the material energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is always giving us trouble in the shape of the threefold miseries. This material energy is constituted of the three modes of material nature. One has to raise himself at least to the mode of goodness before the path to understanding the Supreme Lord can be opened. Without raising oneself to the standard of the mode of goodness, one remains in ignorance and passion, which are the cause of demoniac life. Those in the modes of passion and ignorance deride the scripture, deride the holy man, and deride the proper understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They disobey the instructions of the spiritual master, and they do not care for the regulations of the scriptures. Excuse me. In spite of hearing the glories of devotional service, they are not attracted. Thus, they manufacture their own way of elevation. These are some of the defects of human society which lead to the demoniac status of life. If, however, one is able to be guided by a proper and bona fide spiritual master who can lead one to the path of elevation, to the higher stage, then one's life becomes successful. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 16th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of the divine and demoniac natures. So I'm just going to review these last 4 verses because they sum up the whole chapter, really. So let's just, instead of calling it hell, which does exist, but we're just going to hellish life, which you can experience in many places right on this earth. You don't have to go any farther. So what does that constitute of? It constitutes a life of desperation, of fear, of confusion, of madness, of just suffering in all kinds of ways. You know. So how does a living being come to that stage, that state? It's described in the beginning in text 21. There are 3 Tribadamnadakasedam Dwaram. There's these gates. Gates means a door, but it's figurative. It means a set of behaviors and beliefs and activities. And if one gets caught up in them, then you're going to suffer. Dvaram nashanam atmana, virtual destruction of the soul. We know the soul cannot be destroyed, but you can be, for a long, long time, you can in a state of suffering and illusion and madness and darkness. So what are they? Lust, anger, and greed. Therefore, one should give them up. Obviously, one should give them up, but it's not so easy sometimes because they're like syndromes, you know. Just like what are you smoking for? You know, there's somebody in my apartment building. It's a lady. She lives downstairs. She's married to a young guy. He plays the guitar. He's very considerate. He doesn't play it, you know, under where I am. This apartment, it plays a little bit, you know. I mean, guitar means electric guitar. So they're very nice, you know. And every so often I encounter her. She's walking outside because he doesn't let her smoke inside. And, you know, she's smoking a cigarette. And what can you tell? I mean, there's no point in telling them, you know, that's bad for you. Of course they know that's bad for you. You can read it right on there. You choke, you know. But there's something, you know, you've become addicted to the nicotine. And, you know, it's just like you surrender to it. So there's many things that are like that, but they may not be so obvious as nicotine. But just having a lot of material desires. I mean, how many times does it talk about in the Bhagavatam? Again, Rishabdev. Pungsastriyamit nibhava metang tayo mato hridaya grantamaho. Ata grihat sheta sutapta vittar janasimoho yamahamameti. He's describing there the standard principle of entanglement. A man and woman get together, they're attracted, you know, they want to have sex, okay, have sex, they get married, you know, and then as soon as you get married, you need a place, obviously, griha, then you need a checha. Checha means a piece of land to farm, or now a job, some kind of gig to support the whole thing. And then come the children, tremendous responsibility, and then you get we used to call, back in New York, I don't know if it knows the Yiddish, the whole mishpocha. You know the phrase? He knows the phrase. Right? The relatives, in-laws. You don't just marry someone, you marry the whole family. Yeah. And then, of course, you have to get a lot of money to support the whole thing. So this is the Janasimoho Yamahamamedi. In this way, the false ego is generated, characterized by I and mine. I am the master of this house, I am the husband of this wife, you know, and these are my children, this is my bank account, this is all I and mine. Big entanglement, you know, and so that's illusion. So one should give up these if possible. And then what does one do? If one is liberated from these doors to darkness and ignorance, then one acts for his own ultimate benefit, shreyas. What we're trying to do in Krishna consciousness is always act for our ultimate benefit. And first we have to know what it is, and then we have to know the activities to perform and those to avoid. You remember the beginning of the chapter, the beginning of the description of the demons. Pravittim chanavittim cha janana virudasara. The demons don't know what to do and what not to do. And Prabhupada says in the purport, and even if they happen to know, they don't care to actually act that way. Oh, I'm not supposed to do it, let me do it, right? There are people like that. I'm supposed to do it, forget it, I'm not going to do it. You want me to do it? What is that? Yeah, don't talk to me about it. Yeah. So that that's the auspicious. In other words, here's the three gates, and if you want to avoid them, then you'll act like this. But if you don't, you give up the Shastra vidis, the instructions of Shastra, and act whimsically, you can't get any perfection, you can't get any happiness, and you certainly can't go to the supreme destination. So, we should want to hear what that siddhi really is. To be free of all the miseries. That's the first thing, and then and be attracted to strive for it. And therefore, the whole point. This is really the therefore for the whole chapter. Therefore, this word pramana is so important. Pramana means something you accept as evidence, as a guide for what you believe and how you're going to act and how you're going to not act. And that's what a shastra is. Bhagavatam is filled with that. Bhagavad Gita, At the end he says, "Have you heard, Arjun? Are you ready to do what I say?" In other words, he's spoken, and it's either or situation. Either Arjun is going to fight or he's not going to fight. And Arjun says, "Yes, by your mercy, all my illusion has been destroyed. I am prepared to act." Kadishye vachanang tava. That's like the whole everything there. I will do as you say. Isn't that essential for all of us at every step of our devotional life? Yes, I will do as I say, even though I don't want to. I know it's the right thing to do. I'm going to do it. And after a while, you take pleasure in doing the right thing and avoiding the bad thing, spontaneously. So, and then kind of Krishna clinches it in the last line. So, tasmat shastra mamana karya karya vibhastado. Therefore, you should know what the shastra says, as what to do and what not to. Karya and akarya. And having known that, you should actually act in such a way as a matter of duty. First, we act as a matter of duty because we're not spontaneously attracted to do the right thing, but we know we should. And when your moral sense is strong enough, you do what you're supposed to do. And before long, you find that you're more spontaneously attracted to do the right thing. And the things that you used to be tempted to do or you'd be attracted to, no more attraction. Or at least not enough attraction so you can't say, "Are you kidding? Forget it," You're working internally here, Oh, I'm sorry, I went over time. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. Time factor. All right, we'll start chapter 17 next week. Hare Krishna.